Hello, everyone, and welcome to Building Community with NHMC. Today's panel is near and dear to my heart. In 2020, I was elected the very first woman president and CEO of the National Hispanic Media Coalition. And today, we are a woman-led civil and human rights organization. In fact, our team is run and operated by 80% Latinas. You know, I grew up in a family filled with the majority of strong and resilient Indigenous Latinas. But when I was in middle school, I wanted to try out for football, flag football. I was told that I couldn't try out. When I asked why, they said that it was because I was a girl and that only boys could try out. I was really confused because my father had raised my sisters and I to believe that we were capable of doing anything that boys could do. That experience really woke me up. The reality is and was that the system was set against us and that everything we were going to do, we had to do better and harder than any man could. And that was just to be seen equal recognition to them. Today, the game is changing when it comes to sports. Not that we are where we should be. Much more work needs to be done, but the women on this panel are leading the change. Today's conversation includes triumphs and challenges for women in sports. Our moderator for today is MJ Acosta Ruiz. She is a very dear friend of mine and a very strong supporter of NHMC's mission. MJ is an Emmy award-winning journalist and host at the National Football League's network. Welcome, MJ. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you, Brenda, for that incredible introduction. It's always an honor, and it just feels like home whenever all of us can gather, to be in a space that's safe and in a space where we all feel seen. So thank you to the National Hispanic Media Coalition for having me. I mean, hosting the Impact Awards Gala, I know it was last year, but it feels like it was yesterday because it really has stuck with me, just what it felt like to be in that room. It was really an incredible experience. So I'm really grateful for all the work that you do. And so when Brenda reached out asking if I'd be interested in moderating this panel of women in sports, immediately yes, but no brainer whatsoever. Of course, I've reported on sports pretty much most of my career, so 12 years plus. It's been my specialty and it's definitely my passion. I'm lucky enough that I've been able to transition my passion through the performing arts into my career now on television as a journalist. I joined the NFL Network in 2018, and in 2020, I was honored to become the first woman of color to host a show on the network, certainly the first Latina and the first Afro-Latina encompassed in that as well. So you're all very much aware, there's not many of us in the sports industry, let alone in sports broadcasting or at the national level here in the US. So being here alongside talented athletes, it really does fill me with excitement to where we're headed, and our increased representation day to day, both on our respective fields and beyond that. So excited to introduce mixed martial arts artist and fighter and just all around athlete, Nicco Montaño, and football quarterback, Diana Flores. Hello to you both. Gracias por estar aquí.
Hello.
Hi, so, hi. Hi, I'm going to start off with sort of just setting the ground level for all of us here and what it means for you to be a woman excelling in the sports industry. Diana, I'll start with you and I'll have Nicco follow.
Okay, first of all, I'm very happy and excited to be here. You both are inspiring women, and I just feel that we're living in a special moment in time regarding women in sports, regarding women empowerment worldwide, and I just feel very proud and happy to be part of that movement alongside amazing women like you both. So let's get started with this. How and what does it feel to me to be a female athlete? I feel proud. I feel a lot of responsibility on the other hand, because one thing I have always been aware, and as time passes, I get more and more, I could say, conscious about that, is that I am here now, and I have had the possibility to achieve all the amazing things I have done because of the work of many other amazing women before me. Maybe not at my field only, flag football, but in sports field. So that's kind of like the responsibility I feel today, nowadays, to keep with that work, to keep making people that were before me feel proud, but also building more opportunities or putting more dreams on many, many young women hearts. One thing I know and I have experienced is that everything we do has a bigger impact than ourselves. And if you do what you do because you love it and you're passionate about it, you will have a bigger and powerful impact out there. So I feel that today I put that responsibility on my shoulders, and I take it with love and with passion and just with the enthusiasm and the commitment to keep just supporting and just contributing to the growth of
Yeah.
women's sports.
What about you, Nicco?
I completely agree with everything. I think being a professional athlete in a male dominant sport was kind of a feat in itself to come out and show like what I was capable of. You know, I honestly haven't had that many fights to have accomplished what I've accomplished. So I think everything happens for a reason, and it's for those right people, right? Like she was speaking about opportunities and the growth on top of like what the path has already been laid out for us. You know, we have Misha Tate, Ronda Rousey. These girls were amazing in leading the path and leading the way. So it was already like bread and buttered for me. I just kind of had to follow their footsteps, but I had to keep my intentions for that sport kind of to myself. You know, there's a lot of ways that a female MMA fighter could be seen as, you know, like a lot of the times people are like, women can't fight, women shouldn't be in the sport. And then Rousey came out and Misha came out and they had their brawls and it was just amazing. And there was some technique to it. And so I think with that, you know, it was just kind of filling in those gaps for myself. And then once ever I got the mic after my fights, you know, I was making sure to bring attention towards like the real warriors and, you know, my friends and my family who were actually like holding it down for like no dapple that was going on when I won my King of the Cage belt. And then the UFC belt, when I spoke Navajo, the Diné language in there, it was so powerful. And I think that was pretty much what a lot of like the younger generations looked up to me for. Not so much for like winning a belt, for sure that, but it was just like, you know, they're like, I'm so happy that you said that in the cage. And so I was just hoping in that moment that like these younger generations can see that they're capable of so much as well.
I know we hear it more now, the representation matters, but I think it becomes, I think, for those outside of marginalized communities, almost like this redundant catchphrase. But for us, it's something that we still, I'm almost 40 years old, and it's something that I still look for, right? I'm looking for the other woman who looks like me, who has that connectivity into what I've been through and breaking through in that space. And Nicco, I love that you mentioned intention, because I think the way you move and why you move is tantamount to your success and to how you build on that. So, you know, you mentioned on the Indigenous side and being able to speak in that language and opening up that world for a community who I'm sure had probably, most of them had never heard a fighter speak to them the way that they speak. And that's huge. So for you as a Latina who has a lot of intersectionality, what does that mean for your community?
I think, you know, it brought a lot of people together. I grew up on the reservation and my dad was Mexican and he was like in a border town. So there's just like these small little villages and these reses. And I think as soon as I said that, it impacted them big, you know, and they could feel it. It was like, I didn't realize I didn't realize that I impacted it that big. So when I came back to Lukachukai, where I grew up, there was this huge parade, and some like people from First Nations came out from Canada, and just all of them just to surprise me. I thought that was amazing, and I thought, like, if we could do this and just like the spur of the moment, imagine like the power that we have as a unit and as the Latina, and brown women, brown faces on TV and speaking for behalf of the voices that don't have these opportunities. That was pretty powerful.
No question. My mom has this phrase, she has many phrases, but one phrase she uses often is cada cabeza un mundo. So everybody, we're all always stuck almost like on these virtual panels, right, in our own little box, and we don't realize how much even one phrase, one word, one action impacts and ripples entire communities. I've been blessed enough to watch it firsthand with Diana. We were just at the National Flag Championships while the Pro Bowl was going on in Orlando, and to see not just the community of young girls, but the young Black and brown girls watching her and realizing, okay, wait, there's one of us there. Like there's proof that it's available to me. So Diana, when you see that, I love watching it. I always get emotional watching it, but you're living with it, and I watch you take the time to speak to these girls one-on-one when you can. What have those conversations been like for that community?
Well, for me now to have the opportunity to experience that, and as you say, to see the impact that everything we have accomplished as a team with Team Mexico winning the gold, then the Super Bowl commercial, and then every little or big thing from there, it is just amazing. You know what? Because when people ask me, like, Diana, how does it feel to live your dream? How does it feel like to see your dream come true? I always say, you know what? This was never my dream. And not because I didn't want it to dream this big. It's because for me, a little 8-year-old girl born and raised in Mexico City, playing a sport that wasn't meant to be a sport for girls, it was not even a possibility. Because I didn't have a role model or someone to see at or to follow. Not even in my sport or out of my sport. It was hard to find those stories. I didn't got to see someone that looked like me, that spoke Spanish in a big stage or having the spotlight, nothing like that. So for me now, the most amazing thing is to see or to think about, wow, now that all these little girls somehow have this vision on their heads now that they know that they can be doing anything they want, that they can be at the biggest stages in the world, that they can hear their language being spoken, as you said, at the biggest stage, that they feel seen, that they feel heard. That's a life changer. And I know that because representation changed my life. And I know that it will keep changing many, many millions of lives. It all comes, for me, greatness starts in the mind by believing that you deserve, by believing that you belong, by believing that you're important, by believing and feeling that you're heard and you're seen. So now that all of these new generations are starting to feel that way, they are starting to own that greatness, and they are starting to realize that they were born for that too. So that's what it is, the most amazing thing for me out of every amazing thing that had happened during this past years, months. It is just to keep reminding the next generations, especially of girls, that they deserve, that they belong, and that they are capable to do anything they want. So that's what I feel most proud of.
I love that. And I love that you mentioned like 8-year-old Diana, right? Because as a young girl, I was exposed to sports through my dad, right? He played basketball in the Dominican Republic. And for me, I knew I didn't have that athletic skill set. I could understand the game and I loved the game, but I couldn't play it to the level that I knew could be competitive. Dance and performing arts was sort of and I bridged the two of those. But early on in my career, I covered youth sports specifically and youth football specifically too. And we did one feature story. There was one girl, and we covered many leagues. This was in South Florida. There was one girl who played defensive end, and this was late 2000s, early 2010. She was the only one there. And a Facebook memory came up the other day of the behind the scenes photo of me doing this feature with her. She must have been, I don't know, 11 or 12 years old. So now I'm on a mission to find this girl, to see what she's done in the past decade plus, to see where she is now, and if she's continued to play, and how she's playing, because the opportunities that there are now, while we still need more of them, weren't even a thing. She was playing with all the boys. And she was crushing them, by the way. She was killing it. And I would imagine, Nicco, for you, I covered MMA early on in my career as well. And the station I worked for, which was a Spanish language, Latino-owned station, did not want to cover the women. They only wanted me to cover, They only wanted me to cover them. And we would go in South Florida. American Top Team was basically where everybody trained, right? You're familiar with it, right? Everybody trained at ATT. So that's where we would go. And there was a ton of women training. But they were like, no, we're going to focus on the male fighters. And it would be a fight that I would have with them on a weekly basis to cover these. And that just doesn't sell. They're not really going to get attention. I'm like, who cares? This is our responsibility to do this. How was it for you coming up? And how was it for you even in your upbringing? How did you get into this field?
Yeah, so that's amazing. I didn't, that's a whole feat in itself as well. Just like, you have to represent a sport, and so, but having it be muted because of the gender is kind of silly. And that's kind of how it was. That's not how it was growing up. I grew up playing rough with my cousins, like there was no, she's a girl, they're like, oh, that's Nicco, be careful. And we just like wrestle around on the trampoline and stuff, and like ride horses and just be rowdy, and it was fun. We like played outside a lot. And as soon as I'd moved to Durango for college. And in my childhood, my dad owned 2 boxing gyms. And every time I'd go and like hang out with him at work, he would just be like, I'm holding pads for you. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, not this again. Like, I'm trying to be a girl now, Dad. So I was like, and I always grew up hitting the pads, but I never like sparred. I did wrestling once. I tried out for wrestling once in middle school. And then when I came to college, I was like, I have to learn self-defense. And like, I'm so like, I am comfortable, just like if I need to like protect myself, I can, but I don't know how, what are the techniques? So I was taking jujitsu classes for my self-defense. And it was, helping with my confidence. It was because a little girl from the res who grew up there and then came to America, right? It's just like, oh my gosh, everything's just so brand new. McDonald's is right there. We need a cell phone, we need books. Everything's so fast paced. And it's just like, okay, I got to get on track. So I think sports was helpful with it. Jiu-jitsu was helpful with that. And like getting into MMA was helpful with that because I had an outlet that I had always had growing up. And so I started doing jiu-jitsu tournaments around the Four Corners area. And I was like, oh, that's the same chick. That's the same chick. Like, we're all just going against each other. So I had started to ask about doing the guys tournaments and getting in the guys brackets. And those were like my first losses, but I was actually getting like the experience that I needed, I felt. And I remember I was doing this promotion. I was on this fight card with Fight to Win up in Denver. And this guy's name is Seth Daniels. I think he's helping with ADCC now. But he was doing Fight to Win tournaments too. And I went up there and I did a jiu-jitsu tournament. And I was like, I paid like $75 to wrestle these same girls. I was like, put me in the guys bracket. And he's like, you have a fight with me like in 2 weeks, like an MMA fight, a title, 135 fight. He's like, if you get injured, I was like, I won't. And I get
I'm fine.
So I get in there, I get tapped out fast, but I was like, darn. I was like, well, at least because I beat all the girls, and then I was like, oh well. But yeah, the next couple of weeks I won the title fight, and that was my first title that I had won. And after that, it was just like, I guess I'll try the next fight. And it just led me to where I am today.
That's incredible. I love that. Along those same lines, I think we do see, similar to what I was talking about earlier, the male athletes are the ones despite what your record could be, what your success is, what you've accomplished, the men are still the ones getting the majority of the major brand endorsements. They're the ones that are getting the forward-facing opportunities, commercial offers. We've seen Deanna break through that wall a bit, right? But I still feel like there's so much more that we could be getting. And in MMA, I mean, before the Ronda Rouseys and the Tates, like you mentioned, Nicco, they really weren't having women at the forefront, despite how badass they were, and that they were getting these titles just like the men were. So, and Deanna, I'll start with you on this one. As you navigate the space of, okay, here I am, I'm a world champion, I'm preparing for the Olympics, I played at the highest level, I represent my country. What else do I have to do to be at an equitable spot with the men that are my counterparts?
That's an interesting topic, I could say, because it
Layers.
is for,
Yeah.
and I'm just gonna say interesting just to keep it like that.
Yeah.
But for sure it is still a reality that we are going through, not only in women in sports, but in society. I feel that what I've experienced, and I know that we all can relate with this, like as women, you have to always prove yourself. No matter what you're doing, you have to always keep proving yourself. You have to keep proving that you're good at what you do. No matter if you already won a gold medal, you have to keep proving that you're still are the best. You have to prove that you deserve all these opportunities. And I have experienced since, not only now, since I was younger, like for us, I feel that in order for someone to give you the opportunity, you have to prove that you deserve it. The other way around with men, most of the times, is I give you the opportunity and then you prove that you deserve that opportunity, if that makes sense. So I feel that even if that's a reality still, we are taking big steps to break through those paradigms and stereotypes. And that's something that makes me feel super proud and happy, because I feel that just by the fact that we are talking about it, that we're putting that topic into the table, we're making a change. We're telling people, yes, this happens. Yes, it is a reality. And I am not being dramatic. I am not like begging for opportunities. I just want to have the opportunities and the platforms that I deserve, that we all deserve. And for me, an important message to any people that has the power or the opportunity to give those opportunities to others, and to give a hand to a female, in this case, a female athlete, it is trust in them. Give them the opportunity. Do not try to see what you're gonna get back right now, because all starts by having one chance, one shot. And I promise you that you will never be disappointed, because us women, and I feel that it is our story, right? Since we were little, we have to break through a lot of paradigms, break through a lot of no's. We have to prove ourselves. We have to work. We have to be resilient. If we really put our focus on something, it is because we love that. It is because we're going to put everything on us to achieve that goal. And it is not like men don't do that, but still, it is a reality. Our fears and the way we approach things in life, it is different. We have that something special. So the fact that we are starting to put those topics into the table, I feel that to make a change. And that's what we need to keep talking about reality. Yes, it is. Sometimes it can be painful. Yes. Sometimes we don't like to say things as they are, but that's what we need. And that's the first step to make a big change.
Huge. Nicco, I see you nodding ferociously down there. Anything that you would add in your experience?
Yeah, like I said, growing up, it was hard to think of having these opportunities as an Indigenous female, as a brown female, and seeing just seeing the opportunities that the guys had when I stepped into fighting right? Most of my sparring partners were men, and it's like just the male ego, you know, with the sport that I do, because we literally fight each other. And just the male ego, sometimes you can see the guys just like you know, feel a certain way if a female fighter is able to get one on them.
Well,
So
how
it's
dare
like
you?
we're totally equal in all sense of that term, of like fighters and like athletes. But when it comes to the opportunities, women do have to be like, oh, I deserve this and I'm capable of it, opposed to males not really having to show experience for the opportunity that's presented to them.
Yeah. I think a big part of that too is there are still not enough, if any of us, in the positions of making the decision, right? Of who gets the endorsement, of who's being put on the forefront, of who is getting the spotlight, right? There are decision makers, there are stakeholders who make that call. And if you just take the comparison of Hollywood, right? The highest positions in film studios, TV networks, executives are overwhelmingly white and male. And that crosses over certainly to sports. It certainly crosses over to the media industry. And it's very, very frustrating. But just like the athletes and the presenters and the analysts are trying to break through, so are the women on the executive side who are trying to break those glass ceilings to get there. Because at the end of the day, people book and hire who they look like and who they feel comfortable with, right? So it's like I always think of that like parallel line, and there's many of them, between what we're doing, I think more in the athlete and presenter side that's way more visible, to our hermanas who are also trying to work their way on the executive front and building the tables that they can sit at, because sometimes those seats aren't even available to them. So you have to create it for yourself. So there's always this push to elevate the representation on every side of the industry. But I am curious to see who ignited that flame, or if there was an athlete for either of you that had sort of the biggest impact for you in the trajectory as an athlete. Deanna, I'll start with you.
Wow. On my end, I started very young. Flag football was not a very popular sport. I started playing with older girls. I was 8 years old, playing with girls that were 16 or 17. We had women playing the game.
Wait, that doesn't even make sense.
I know.
You were 8 and they were 16 and 17. That's
yes, it was the only way for me at that age to play the game,
right.
because we didn't have youth categories, we didn't have a girls team. So we had women playing the game. And I feel the first women that inspired me were them, because that thanks to them, I saw that, oh, this sport is for me too. Even if the world was telling me, no, this is not a sport for you. You cannot do this. You're too young. You're too small. You're too blah, blah, blah. So for me, the first group of women were them. The ones that I could see, even if it felt so, I don't know, like so local, so small on one hand, it was a reality too. It was a possibility for me. So as I started growing up, I went to the challenge to play with boys again, because as I started growing up, I didn't had a lot of options. So I ended up being like the only girl in a all boys league, feeling, you know, sometimes feeling like an intruder, you know, into a sport that was telling me all the time, like, no, you don't belong, you don't belong, you don't belong. And in that moment in time, was when I heard about the story of Billie Jean King, about this historic battle of the sexes. And it was because of a 12-year-old girl literally going on Google, trying to find men against women in sports, because I was trying to see, like, is this normal? Yeah, I feel that I can do it, but why is the world telling me that I cannot compete, that I don't belong, that I don't deserve? And when I started like getting to see that out there were many other women doing many other different things, but they were breaking these barriers. They were doing it, and they did it before me. So that I feel that it started like lighting up in me this desire of also break these barriers, also showing up, because I knew that out there, even if I didn't know them, even if it was in my sport, there were
Yeah.
women that were doing those things happen. So for me, I feel it has always been about those women before me breaking these barriers to somehow show me the way, even if it was a hard path, somehow telling me like, yes, keep up. Whatever you're doing is gonna pay off someday. And of course, having powerful women at home, my mom, always pushing me through these
Yeah.
obstacles and hard times.
So this was what, 12, 13-ish years ago that you had this moment. You're Googling this, like men versus women in sports.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and the example that came up to you was Billie Jean King, who played decades, and this battle of the sexes happened decades and decades before. This is what we're talking about, right? Like, this is the disparity in that type of field. For you, Nicco, what was the catalyst for you that really pushed you towards this? I know you mentioned the really wanting to get more self-defense training when you were in college, but the competitive side, that takes a spark, I feel.
Yeah, I was like so in denial about actually liking fighting for so long, because I'm like, that's so like, who just wants to fight? But I was like, oh man,
lots of people.
Yeah, I know, right? And I was like, well, and you had mentioned that you're a performing artist, and like that's kind of what I wanted to go to college for originally. And so I was like okay with being like on stage and like, you know, being the only person out there with the light on me. But I had like cues to do when I was on stage. When I'm fighting, it's just all improv, which I'm horrible at. So I'm just like, okay, I guess I'll just keep doing it. But what really like the catalyst was actually, like Deanna said, just the women at home, you know, watching Rousey, obviously, like, so Misha Tate and Rousey, right? And I got to a point where I'm just like looking down the hallway at the PI and I'm like, what's up, Misha? And I'm like, oh my God, how am I saying this? And but definitely when Rousey and her fights were going, it was just like, oh, I don't have to get punched in the face. I can just take someone down and armbar them. Okay,
right.
I'll do that. Yeah, I will do that. And I did that like my whole amateur career. So it was hard to find anyone to fight me after like 5 fights, 5 amateur fights. I had to turn pro. And so, but like what really kept me going was my grandma and my mom too, you know. My grandma was from the boarding school days. So she has so many stories, and just sitting across the breakfast table from her and hearing about her daily struggles is nothing compared to what I, you know, had to go through. I could be like cutting weight and on a diet, but I'm like, at least I have options, you know. And so keeping that into perspective with the matriarch of, you know, Latinas and indigenous communities, the matriarch is what holds everyone together. And now that we're like living in a world where patriarchy is, you know, it's realistic, but it is an issue when we start to like come to head with culture and matriarch and patriarchy. So keeping like close to my family and making sure that, you know, our oral traditions are being understood, and respecting the elders, you know, just like everything culturally is kind of what kind of just geared me into doing what I'm doing. Because I can be like, oh, you know, I'm like, oh, I'll just skip practice today. And I'm like, no way you're going to skip practice. You have an opportunity and you have a talent. Like, I'll go through this monologue in my head and I'm like, you know, you're making your grandparents proud. You're making your mom proud. And they have not come this far for you to just lay in bed today.
Right. Period. That part. I think that the generational aspect of it is huge, right? Knowing that what our parents and grandparents and the line before them sacrificed and went through for us to even have the coraje to say, I'm going to pursue this. It's never been done before, but I'm going to do it. And I know that I can because your strength has fueled mine. And I think that says a lot about it. But that's within, like you said, within our homes, within our tight-knit communities. I'm curious, and I know a little bit more within like the flag and MMA. There are other fighters, there are other players now in the NFRU, other teams, but is there like an ERG group? Is there an affinity group that says, okay, we're going to meet, or we're going to have a system, a group chat where we can all just have a safe space to talk about the things that we're going through together, to celebrate our wins? And if it doesn't exist for you, what would you want it to look like? Nicco, I'll start with you.
You know, being a female fighter is tough, but when you get to hang out with other female fighters, and I was training in Vegas a lot, there was JoJo, there was all kinds of freaking girls that were coming through, and like Roxanne and I were teammates at the end, and it was just like, it was nuts because I had never ever even thought that I'd be standing in a room with all of these great female fighters. And you know, we'll have hard days and we have our coaches, you know, which are men and mostly men. And so they're like, just do this, and you're like, dude, her elbow doesn't work like that. I'm not gonna armbar this chick. I'm gonna take her down and we're gonna do rear naked. But
yeah,
I think like having that support system with the girls, you know, like we all could just look across the room and we'll be like, shoot each other a look, and we're like, oh, we know what you're saying. Yeah. That was like super apparent in Vegas, and I couldn't have like pushed through. Like the whole COVID situation was nuts. And those girls were like super helpful, and without, you know, and it's crazy because each girl has their own career, so each girl wants to, we need to beat each other in order to progress in our careers. So I think with women, like, it's not personal at all. Like whatever happens in the cage stays in the cage, and we are totally fine and groovy about getting back on the mats the next day with each other, you know. So I think with that, like, I'm not sure how often that happens, but from the communities that I've been through, the fight communities and camps that I've been through with the girls around me, they have been the reasons why I kind of stuck around through the hardships, you know. And I think finding a safe space nowadays is kind of what I'm looking to build. So I have an LLC and I go and travel, and I'm like a kids counselor up in Alaska a lot, and I teach self-defense, and I do like anti-bullying kind of workshops with little kids, and we just do jujitsu games, and we get familiar with our bodies, you know. And I'm like, your body is a weapon. You can do anything you want with it. Like, you got to be intentional about what you're doing. You know, can't harm anybody, golden rule, treat others how you want to be treated. So I think it's a mindset. It's definitely a state of mind of where you want to be in the world and how you want to leave the world, you know?
What I found so beautiful about that is the nature of your sport. It is, while there are teams, yes, you fight as an individual, and you literally have to beat the other person. There literally can only be one winner, one title holder, like all of that stuff. Whereas I think in other spaces, and again, it took me long enough to say, I can't believe it's taking me 30 minutes to even get to patriarchy talk in this setting. Usually I dive right in. I was trying to hold myself back. But I think society and our industries have conditioned us to think that there can only be one, and that you do have to intentionally be mean to somebody else. And that was a mindset I refused to take on, because early on in my career, a lot of people said, well, not only are you a woman, but you're a Black woman and you're a Latina. I heard the word triple minority more times than I cared to recall throughout my career. And they're like, so you have to, like, literally don't talk to anybody, like, just go in. I'm like, what are you talking about? That doesn't even make sense in my brain. Also, that's not who I am as a person. So I love that you like the main tenet of what you do in your job is, yes, we have to go in there, we have to fight. That is the job. But outside of that, like, we still have to lean on each other. And I think outside of that space, most people would be like, that's wild. I don't even know how to reconcile that. But it's such a beautiful way to just keep yourself grounded and self-aware. For you, Liana, you literally have a team of women, a whole team with you. But I know that when we've done stuff with NFL Flag, for example, there are other quarterbacks and other captains. You know, we just saw Mona Stevens, who plays out in Germany, and there's women from all over the world. What has it been like for you to form that community?
It is amazing, and I love a lot of things that Nicco said regarding how they interact between your sport, because I feel that it is very similar to what we do in flag football.
Mhm.
And it is, for me, it is because we have a wider understanding that, again, like what everything we're doing right now is for a bigger purpose,
Mm.
that we can relate with each other's struggles. We know what it took to the other person,
Yep.
even if it is in my team, other women in my team, or from another country. I know what it took to her to be where she is now.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know their personal stories, maybe I don't know the details, but we know the struggles. We know what we have to fight through, and all the challenges. And I feel every time we connect with each other, every time we have the opportunity to do something for our sport by ourselves, something to give back to the next generations, is with this feeling and this passion to give back, to maybe do the journey for the next generations of girls at this sport easier, or more enjoyable, or just grow the opportunities for them, because we know that we don't want them to go through all this like
Yeah.
challenges. We don't want them to hear that they cannot, that they don't deserve, that they don't belong. So I feel that besides the field and besides what we do on the field, competing against each other, there's always this feeling of sorority and support
Yeah.
outside of the field. And for sure, that's what makes the real change. That's what keeps like pushing our game forward, and just pretty much keep building platforms for everyone.
Yeah.
One thing I love is that in flag football, we know that it is a sport that it is still a growing sport, that it is the beginning for we have LA 28, yes, but we have a lot to accomplish before getting there. And we know that we all can do something to contribute to that growth. And at the end of the day, the love for the sport, the love for the next generations that are coming after us is bigger than anything. And that's what makes so special, I feel, the community of women in sport. Because if we keep talking about it, it goes like wider than just our particular sports. I know, and I can bet that every time you see a new from now Caitlin Clark, we're like, yes, girl, like, yes, I was so proud, and you share it, and you like just try to bring the spotlight to them, because we know the struggles, and we know that we want to make a change.
100%, 100%. I think the visibility part of it, right? To not only support each other, but to support each other loudly and visibly is super important, because there were a lot of women who I looked up to in the industry who were very, very cruel to me, or very standoffish to me. And look, everybody doesn't have to be your friend. That's fine. But I think that being kind, and I think when you are the first or the only, you do have an inherent responsibility to pay that forward to the next generation. And to your point, Deanna, to make sure that they are empowered to do the same thing. All of my closest and longest standing friends are all other Black and brown women who are in the TV, entertainment, and sports industry. And I can tell you without a doubt in my mind, there is 0% chance that I would have gotten through all of the stuff that I've gone through without them, without our group chat, without knowing that, hey, I'm going to an audition, like they're looking for people, come through, even if they get it over me or whatever, but like the sharing of information, the encouragement, it's huge. It's a big, big part of that. Not gatekeeping, right? We have enough gatekeepers trying to keep us out. We can't keep each other out in the middle of that. There was a study, an EY study, that found that women who participated in sports in school, and I categorize a lot of things under sports, and cheer, dance, also very, very difficult and physically taxing. But the women who participated in sports in school were more likely to graduate from college and contribute to their career success when they have a background in athletics. I think the discipline of it, no question, the time management of it, no question, the dedication to it, of course. What have each of you learned about yourselves from being an athlete? And what do you wish other people knew about being a woman in sports?
What I have learned from being an athlete, as you mentioned already, I think a lot of values that sports just teach us is discipline, resilience, responsibility, that I feel that, of course, are valuable during your life, not only on the field, but also out the field.
Yeah.
But I think the most valuable thing I've learned is to connect with others,
Wow.
connect from a deeper perspective, which is from the same passion, from the love for the sport, from the commitment to achieve a same goal. That kind of connection that you can have with people around you, it doesn't have to be your teammate, it can be your coach, it can be also the supportive system that are around you, has been life-changing for me, because in that way I feel that I've learned to really connect with others, to get to hear others, to listen to what they want, their desires, but also as my position being quarterback, of course, for me, it is how I can help the people around me be their best version of themselves, in order to achieve one same goal. And that kind of leadership, I could say, that kind of way to connect with others is the thing that I value the most, because it has changed my life, not only as an athlete on the field, but also off the field. And what I wish people know about being women in sports is that I haven't, or I'm gonna start again. Like, the most passionate and the most committed women I know are the ones that have been through a journey in sports, in arts, in all of these fields that we still have to work on breaking barriers, building opportunities, because the resilience we have, the commitment, the passion, the love, it's no tiene igual. So I wish people know that every time they meet a female athlete, just know that she have gone through a lot of things, and that what she has in her heart to bring to you is valuable.
I love that. Nicco, what about for you? What have you learned about yourself from being an athlete, and what do you wish people knew about women in sport?
Well, I've learned definitely a lot of resilience as well. A lot of dedication. You know, I've pushed my body to the limit, having to make weight. You know, I've realized that I am capable of exceeding so many boundaries personally, and just like overcoming fear like it's nothing, you know. And again, I can hone into these stories about like my grandma and the cultural stories of these strong women in the past who have done this to live, just to like survive. And this is just for me to make money and to have a voice for everybody else going through a struggle at the end of that fight. You know, that fight's definitely a metaphor for the camp, for the journey, for where I'm at today. You know, each camp is a new version of myself, and I love that. You know, and I think most fighters will agree to that, and most female athletes will, you know, attest to having gone through struggle, whether it's like team oriented or fight oriented. We can't, you know, I can't go into the cage without any of my teammates. So there is a team involved as well. And the mentality of being the only person in the fight, though, knowing that there's only going to be one winner. That mentality of being like, I'm the best kind of changes once, I get in the cage. I'm like, I don't have like this fraud mentality anymore. I'm not like overzealous of anything. I'm just like, I'm standing across from this other, pretty awesome chick. And we get to just like share this space together and like show everybody what we're capable of, our vulnerabilities, our flaws, our mistakes, our perfection. And so the creative side of me is just like, MMA is just so infinite when it comes to, mental growth and spiritual growth and physical growth. So I think, that's definitely a side that I would want people to know. Each camp is a whole new version of that fighter.
I love that. I love hearing your stories because it refuels me, right? Because every so often we do need a little bit of a reminder, a little bit of a pick me up, and even just staring in the mirror and hyping yourself up sometimes isn't enough. So I think having this discourse and these conversations amongst us and then making it shareable to everybody else to glean from is huge. So thank you both so much for being so open and candid and vulnerable with all of us and for sharing that insight. This has been tremendous. I took mental notes, so I will be applying a lot of that athlete mentality to what I'm doing every day. And thank you, of course, to the NHMC for bringing us together. This has been incredible.